make me work for it. Applause before you start talking is kind of ominous. That is the most brutal feedback form I've ever come across. How worthwhile did you find Ewan McIntosh? Very worthwhile, helpful, useful, some value, not worth coming. So I hope that it's at least worth coming for. I'm amazed how quickly dates come around as well. I can't believe it's already May 19th. But I've been looking forward to this for some time. Partly because through the stuff that you and your colleagues publish in your blogs, I am quite au fait with the amazing innovations that do go on in some corners of the borough and of the thought that goes into it. So I'm not here really to do a talk about cool tools you can use in your classroom or anything like that, because you have people in your authority that can show and share that. What I'm hoping to do, I'm quite glad that the introduction is the same as what I thought we'd be doing, because I'm interested in participation and how to get people to participate in stuff. Whether it's education or not, to be frank. Education is obviously the main thing, it's what I enjoy the most. But participation fascinates me. Why is it that people do stuff and don't do other stuff? All of you will be part of communities already. You may be part of a church choir or a church, or maybe you're part of a book group, or maybe you're part of a sports club or a music band. And there's some kind of inherent motivation that makes you do that and put yourself out to go along to rehearsals and take part in that community. And I've been fascinated with how you tap into what makes people want to take part in a community to make children want to take more part in the learning that they have. So, again, to go on to the second rather brutal point on your feedback form, where stated outcomes achieved, completely, mostly, partly, or not at all. So I better give you the outcomes for this. The outcomes, I hope, are that you walk away with a better understanding of how the world out there impacts on what goes on in our classrooms and what goes on in our virtual learning environments and our virtual learning spaces. And also, as a secondary aim, I'd hope that you're able to maybe learn a tick or two about how to feed your brain and feed your ideas, if you like. Ideas don't come out of thin air, they come when you meet other people and talk to them. That's why people enjoy the coffee break the most in a conference, because you get to catch up with colleagues. But actually, when you're talking to colleagues, is when you learn probably more than you learn from people like me, so I'm going to move on. This talk, it's quite fresh, but the beginning part is really the story of the last few months, something that's really kicked me into action. And it was when I was working with some international teachers in Glasgow. We had one of these ARIAN visits to Scotland, and I wanted to host a little event to show what we were doing in the education agency there. And that was the quote that I got from this French teacher. Maybe I shouldn't have said she was a French teacher. My wife's French. She was from a different way of thinking. And she thought that, why would I start students writing by playing a computer game? I know nothing about it, and it'd be easier for me to show a film. So if you're a languages teacher yourself, I'm a languages teacher by trade. Personally, I love using film to teach, because French film in particular is great to use. It's great fodder for ideas and writing and speaking. I looked at this phrase and kind of thought, I probably said that myself sometimes. But then I did the word count on it, and realised how many times she talked about herself in the sentence. I wouldn't do this, it's not for me. When really what she should have been saying is, my students need to start writing by playing computer games, because they know everything about it, and it'd be easier for them than watching a film. Because ideally we should be trying to connect with what makes our learners tick, not what makes our life easy. The second thing that brought me down this year, that wanted me to build back up, was at Bet. I went for my pizza on the last day of Bet at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like the first meal of the day. And behind me was this couple. Teachers had walked in. I hope they're not in this room. That'd be really bad. They walked in with your pizza expected at 4 o'clock in Olympia. What did you get with Bet this year? And I was waiting for this lovely discussion about, oh, wonderful seminar and formative assessment, and I feel this new curriculum, well, it's a copy and paste from Scotland, so I think we might actually be going somewhere with it. But no, what I heard, got a nice mug, I got an orange, see on it, and all this paper. I went round Bet and I went on an experiment, took any piece of paper that was thrust in my way, and then weighed it. And it was 3.5 kilograms. Now, on Ryanair, if you're flying with Ryanair back home, I got stung for excess baggage coming back from Pisa 2 weeks ago. It's €15 a kilo. Someone who's better than maths than I am can probably work out how much that would cost you. So a lot of paper, but nothing learned. No new experiences. A waste of their time. So, I'm going to take you through 5 points today. Hopefully, if my alarm clock goes off and says, you've overrun, then we'll stop. And we'll take some questions instead. And I'll try and get the last points out through those questions. But the points that really raised, a lot of this comes from a new book that's just out, which I can only recommend. Clay Shirky's Here Comes Everybody. And I am unashamedly borrowing some of his phrases because he explains it so clearly and so much better than I have been so far. But the thoughts haven't really changed that much in the last year. The first one's really to do with technology and its orderliness. Now we heard about Tanya Byron's research allowing us to do extraordinary things, but we also need to take safety on board, but we need to use technology for what it can empower us to do. Really interesting quote in the final report she came out with about keeping our children empowered and safe online, was the technology itself is not transformative, it's school, the pedagogy around it that's transformative. Now for me, and for you, I hope that's a duh moment. You're going, duh, of course. But for a lot of people, when you actually look at how we go about adopting technology, it's not the way we work. Another one from Clay himself, that's him, that's the back of his head, not the front of it. Tools don't get socially interesting until they get technologically boring. Now podcasting is something I was doing with my kids 4 years ago, and blogging 5 years ago. And at the time it was technologically fascinating, because nobody was doing it. And it was socially completely dull, because no one knew how to interact with it. So although we had, we'd take a school trip abroad to France, we'd have 8,000 hits, 7,500 hits visits in the course of a 5-day trip, which is fantastic. We'd have 400 comments, which sounds fantastic as well. But actually, for 8,000 visits, we could have had a lot more comments. The reason we weren't is because it was new. Now, schools who do this don't need to do much in the way of marketing. They don't need the Guardian to do a full-page spread, which is what we had because it was new, in order to get people to come to the site. All you have is local communities getting engaged with this technology because they're used to it. If you go to the Daily Mail site, you can leave a comment in the story. It's not out of the ordinary. It's becoming socially interesting. So the first point is that ordinary tools can have extraordinary effects. That we needn't worry too much about this pressure to keep up with the latest gadgets and tools, because frankly some of the most powerful technologies are the ones that are the simplest to use, that are the most accessible. Change begins to happen when people feel comfortable using the technology. One example of this is the HSBC. I don't know if you came across this story, but HSBC wanted undergraduates when they were trying to attract new bank customers. So they said, we'll give you a free overdraft. No money required, no fees. And so the students lapped it up. They all took these HSBC accounts. And then HSBC, with the credit cards, realised we can't afford this. We can't afford to lend all this money to these students. They're just, So they, over the summer break, HSBC took a bit of a gamble. They realised that most of these students would be away in summer jobs, so they graduated. They would be dispersed all over the country, all over the world. So the chances of them being able to do, 1968 type of, protests in the university about the fact the bank were going to be asking them for all this money, because they gave them 30 days to change, and that was it. They thought, well, first of all, that's not going to happen. And the second thing, it's really hard to change a bank account. It's a real pain in the neck. What they didn't bank on was Facebook. Now, for HSBC, Facebook is not a familiar tool. Facebook is an extraordinary tool, one that they don't really use in-house at all. For students, it's bread and butter. It's what email for you is Facebook is for them. And that's not to put you down. I'm sure many of you are on Facebook as well. What I'm saying is that for most people aged 35 plus, according to the latest research from Ofcom, Facebook is an oddity. It's something they don't really do. Whereas for undergraduates, Facebook is the way of communicating. And these students were able to find each other in a few clicks. One student kicked it off, and within days, weeks, thousands of students were protesting against these charges the HSBC were going to do. They were going to hold a huge demo in front of the headquarters in London, and it never happened because HSBC reneged, okay, we'll not charge you for your overdraft. What had happened there was HSBC had underestimated what this ordinary tool could do. It could have an extraordinary effect, it could change company policy. And that age group use social networking all the time. 90% of 15 to 25-year-olds have visited their social network in the past month. Hands up if you have. Connected authority. That's really impressive. That is really impressive. You can put your hand down, not so smug, okay? I have to be honest, most teacher conferences, it's not like that. And maybe that says a lot for Redbridge. MySpace would be the third biggest country in the world. If you sort of had a space, you know, it's got an online space, but it's just behind China and India, and slightly bigger than the USA. So it's 300 million users and climbing. So these social networks, they have powerful elements, but the interesting thing, that quote that I mentioned earlier from Esther Dyson, that things are becoming, people talk about things being intuitive when actually they mean familiar. MySpace is intuitive and familiar to a whole generation. That way of working is very familiar to them, and they find our way of doing things occasionally quite quaint. But these users, they don't think of MySpace as the third biggest country in the world, of course, because most MySpace users have their 10 friends. Most MySpace users have a very close, very small social network. And when we talk about audience, we have to be quite careful. I banged on about audience now for 3 years about being an important thing. And I just want to slightly change the focus of it. It's not about having a huge audience, it's about having the right audience. This is a girl's Bebo page. And she had gone away on a trip, a school trip, to the Somme, to the battlefields. And with her English, it was her English teacher's idea to do this, to do some creative writing and historical research as well. And the teacher had set up a school blog. And his name is Neil Winton. He's a really good blogger in Scotland. The English teacher, writes very well. And he'd set up this blog, and the kids hadn't left any comments on it. And he was really distraught. He put all this effort into creating the school trip blog. Bless you. And they don't think about, the kids weren't thinking about leaving comments and long diatribes about the trip there. So he broke it to them, spoke to them and said, "Kids, what's going on here?" They said, "Oh no, we've been writing about it, but we've been doing it in Bebo." So Bebo was blocked in the school, so he had to go home to look up the work that they had done. He had to go home to look at their homework. Just ironic, twisting the thing around. And this piece of writing, the bit at the bottom's not that good. The bit at the top's really good, after the shiz, which means it was really good. So the chip was a shiz. I'd love to go back, see all the places, do all those things again. But halfway down's the bit that got me. Until you've been to places like Notre Dame de Lorette and seen the sheer scale of graves, or Hunter's Cemetery and seen the graves of people who went to the same school as I go to now, you won't understand how it feels. You won't understand how it feels to look upon the tens of thousands of graves and think those people gave their lives for me. The Germans gave their lives in their thousands fighting for what they thought was right, so that was emotional too. To look at the graves, 26 out of 30 of them were known unto God. To look at wreaths and read messages to the granddad I never met. Words cannot describe the experience. Really good writing. And it's not been corrected by a teacher, it's not had a red pen over it at any stage. But why did she put it in Bebo? Because the audience in Bebo is the audience that matters to her most. It's her friends. It's the one she feels comfortable sharing her text with, unedited, unfiltered by a teacher. I'm not talking about having all your kids going to Bebo to do the homework. I'm not talking about using social networks in the classroom. It may work, it may not. I'm not going to come to a decision on that. I am talking about learning from their space. Going and have a noodle around what they do online to understand what makes them tick. Understand why they do things there that they don't do in other online spaces, and then using those lessons to make the online spaces we create for education much more appealing to them. In East Lothian, we did this last year. They had an online community. They had a couple blog servers set up so that teachers could share what they did. And for a long time, it just kind of flatlined. You can see that. And around September, August, September, a couple of years ago, I joined the team. And we said, well, we actually need a strategy. There's no point just putting a platform out there. If you have a VLE, you just put it there. Do the kids use it? Absolutely not. What you need to do is give them a reason to, give them something, things to draw them in, things to make them passionate about it. And you can actually see that the minute we started on our adoption strategy, and I'll put a link into that. You can go off and read into detail on these things if you're into how do you get people to adopt a certain technology large scale. But you can see that the number of people starting blogs went up, and the number of visits to those blogs started to go up. And this is just one indicator. It wasn't just blogs that kids and teachers were publishing on, it was all sorts of Flickr pages and Blip TV pages and things like that. You'll also notice that after the summer holidays, the number of visits fell off. It started to come back up a little bit, but it fell off. What's fascinating here is that, yes, there are fewer visits, but people are actually spending longer on the sites. So what you've got is the beginning of real community. Instead of just going and having a cursory glance at what a primary school kid was doing in their class, parents were now spending half an hour on the blog site, really getting in depth with what their kids were doing, leaving comments for the class, for the classroom teacher. And parents actually ended up being the biggest winners out of this, because they could keep in touch with what the kids were doing in the class, no problem at all. And the key to it for us was creating a very simple web address, edubuzz.org. It says what buzz in the tin. It's educational, it's got a buzz about it. And by giving that homepage, parents could very quickly find their school, but they weren't interested in the school, they were interested in the class that their kid was in. And so each blog might only have an audience of 20, because class sizes in Scotland for primary schools are tend to be 20. But that audience of 20 or 40, depending on what kind of family you have in the school, is the most crucial audience for those kids. So it's not about huge audiences of 300 million, it's about small, passionate audiences that really care about the work going on in the school. Audience is vital. Kids are now growing up with an audience. My 9-month-old daughter at the moment is very aware of audience, because yesterday there was an Elvis film on TCM, and I didn't realise that my daughter was an Elvis fan, but apparently she is. She stared at the television, she likes Elvis, and she was bobbing her head up and down. And of course, the minute I said to my wife, "Hey, look at this," what happened? She stops. So even at 9 months, she's aware people are looking at her, and she'll stop doing what she was doing. Isn't that quite curious? That's my armchair psychology. I'm not a psychologist, but I think it's they have a sense of audience. What we need to help them do is appreciate and understand how to exploit that audience, which for teenage girls does not mean going semi-naked on your People page. It means creating some really good writing that people want to go and read. One example, here's a girl who had trouble with her creative writing, so her teacher created a blog for her and said, "Go and do this." Well, actually, the kid created the blog. The teacher held the hand. So she wrote little and often, because she had 6 weeks until her examination in creative writing, which is the biggest oxymoron I've ever heard of. And she needed to improve her skill in technique. So she wrote small paragraphs, small edits each time, and then had her teacher and her teacher's friends leave comments afterwards. Just the little tips on how to improve. And it's based on the 2 stars and a wish. Except her teacher's a little bit crueler than that. It tends to be 1 star and a few wishes. So some good stuff. Now think about the following. And she's straight to, you've got a comma splice here. Can you think of a more apposite verb than drove? Time doesn't drive slowly past, does it? Time does something else. So she built on it. It got longer. Much longer over time, over the space of a couple of weeks. Wonderful use of single sentence paragraphs. She'd been reading Ian Rankin and liked the idea of a 1 paragraph, 1 word paragraph, slag, in the middle of her text. It does fit into the story, it's not just random. She'd also, I think maybe she moved into Christopher Brookmeyer at that point. And then what I loved is that back in August, the blog went quiet obviously during the exams and after the exams. In August, when the examination results came out, she wrote a blog post with my progress report. She said she'd gone from a grade 3, which was mediocre in creative writing, to grade 1, which is super duper. But not just in writing, across the board in English. That this process had helped her think critically. Something which just wasn't happening in the regular classwork. The only difference between her and her classmates was that she was writing little and often and having feedback from, as you can see, 16 people. Many of them strangers to her. Many of them teachers that had been asked as a favour to go and leave a comment, and who ended up getting hooked on the story, a bit like a Sunday Times serial. You want to see what's going to happen next. It's even stretching to PhDs though. This is not just stuff for schools. There's a guy in the States, let me just move on here, called, his name? Is it Johnny? I think it's Johnny. Johnny has this this technology. In fact, that's him there. I think I've probably picked up the wrong video. The wonderful thing about this is it's technology he's invented. He takes a Wiimote from the Wii, Nintendo Wii, which has got a little infrared sensor, puts the sensor on a camera instead of above the television, and straps the camera to the side of his head. Are you following me? And it means at that point he reverses what the Wii does, and it means that he ends up having a 3D version of whatever he's looking at on the screen. Let me show you, because a video is so much clearer than a 50,000 word dissertation.
Desktop.
Let me just see if I can find the bit.
And this will look familiar. If you
Actually, this isn't him.
John Woo, I think is.
And this is the wonderful thing.
His videos. So here's the
because he's down here in this related video, yeah? This is a video response thing. This is a guy in his bedroom who's taken research from a MIT, is MIT, I can't remember. He's a PhD, studying these things for his PhD. He puts a video on YouTube and ends up with thousands of people copying him and learning from his PhD and creating their very own Wiimote head tracker. I'm going to put the actual video so you can see. I think that's cool. Now his actual video, his has 5 million odd views.
Hi, my name is Johnny Lee.
Quite clearly a PhD. How could I have got the video wrong the first time? So he put up his explanation. You know, you can get more info here. He's even put his little thing. He's at Carnegie, so Carnegie Mellon. He created this technology using Wiimote. He's also done one where you attach a remote to the top of your data projector. You turn any surface into a multi-touch interactive whiteboard. Stelges right here. Right, thank God they're not here now. Don't buy an interactive whiteboard. Buy a Wiimote instead for what? 30 quid, yeah. And with 30 quid, you can create this multi-touch. You can have several hands. You can have 10 fingers, have 20 fingers on the screen moving things around, and it's really cool. And of course, you don't have to ask me for the link. You can just go to YouTube and search for it. Yeah. So there he is. He's got his camera.
Just a quick note: the power of the sensor bar.
He explains. It's like 1970s Open University in this speaker. He explains how to do it, and then gives you the demo so you can see the point of it all. So this is what we saw in the previous video. No point at all, it's two-dimensional.
The image looks very two-dimensional and balanced with the surface of the TV.
And you get a PhD too. And then he turns his head tracking on.
Now with head tracking turned on, TV actually looks like the entrance to a real room. Just like in real life, by moving our head around, we can look behind objects. And if you look really closely,
cool?
some targets actually
imagine Google Earth
in front
being able to peek around the Taj Mahal
world. If we get closer to the screen, we get closer to the objects, and we can even get behind the one.
See this one here, hovers above the laptop. I think that's magic. Now, not only do I think it's magic, but you could recreate this. Now, this is a guy doing his PhD. I doubt he's going to finish it, to be honest, because he's got all these companies saying, we'll offer you big bucks to come and work for us. Who do you think the main companies are that want to go and work for them?
Microsoft.
Games. Computer games. Where instead of doing that to avoid the bullets, you have to do that. Or if you want to go surfing, you can actually go surfing and feel for real and avoid the waves. So he's done this through YouTube. PhD through YouTube. Because ultimately, qualifications and certificates mean nothing in this day and age. What matters is that you have your own blog, your own YouTube channel, you put your views out, and if it's any good, it will rise to the top. If it's not any good, people will tell you so. People will say, not worth doing. And they won't go, and they won't link to your blog, and you'll carry on doing your own PhD, and you'll end up with tenure, living comfortably in the suburbs, or you'll be like Johnny Lee and go off for a cool gaming company. So, it's really changed the game in terms of, your students aren't just doing work for work's sake, they're doing work for an audience, small or large, 5 million, but they're doing work for an audience that will appreciate it in some way, or be able to help them out in some way. Second point, the wonderful thing about this technology, as many of you will already have discovered, I think the word that's often used is motivation. It's motivational to help kids be motivated. There are 113 million blogs tracked by Technorati at the moment, that number going up all the time, and not really taking account of blogs in India and China and South Korea, places where getting that information is not so easy. 2 new blogs every second, 17.5 new blog posts every second. Many of them created by youngsters in your class. This isn't just a secondary school phenomenon, by the way. I'm sure many of you work in primary school know that your year 4s and maybe even your year 3s are trying things out in social networks and publishing stuff. What it allows them to do is it allows the barely motivated to become activists. It allows people who really don't give a damn about much in their life to look as if they do give a damn and at least have a gesture. And I want to bear with me on this point. It's tenuous, but we do get there in the end. There's a phenomenon I came across, which I like to call the Bebo Boomers. I wrote an article in The Guardian with the headline, Bebo Boomers make a stand, and within 10 minutes had the chief executive Bebo on my phone. And he said, I really like that, can we trademark it? It's kind of, what are the Bebo Boomers? Well, the baby boomers were those guys in the 60s who stood up for their rights, went in demos, held up placards, made a change, changed the world. And now, that generation, what are they doing? Well, they're retiring, they're living very comfortable lives, they're, normal is the word I would use. The Bebo generation, the Bebo boomers, are doing exactly the same, but they're doing it in a different medium. Most of them, this example is Edinburgh kids. Edinburgh kids wanting to save 22 of their schools from closure. And what they did was, some of them set up a group, Students Against Closures, on Bebo, and just word of mouth meant that within a few days, 500 members had accrued on this site. And they used the site to coordinate activity. If I go down to the bottom, they put in the newspaper articles, because young people don't read newspapers. So they put in the articles about the schools, filtering that information through for them. And they used the discussion boards here to coordinate what they were going to do. And the reason I knew they were coordinating is because on the news, I kept seeing these kind of photos. And I thought, they've all got the same slogan. Students Against Closures, Students Against Closures. And it was called SACK. And what they wanted to do was sack the council. Now, I thought that's really good marketing, and that's not just happened. Something's going on. And it took me about 5 seconds to find the Bebo group through Google. Because what they were doing was doing what young people do, get together online and coordinate. And then it worked really well. They did save their schools from closure. Funnily enough, teachers did exactly the same on Facebook. 500 teachers also got together on Facebook. The kind of sad thing is that neither the Bebo group nor the Facebook group had any cognizance that the other existed. Which tells you a lot about teacher-pupil relationships. That teachers don't talk to pupils about what they do. And pupils don't talk to teachers about what they do. But this political activism was going on both sides, underneath the surface, but they didn't ever talk to each other about it. If there's ever one lesson, it's talk to the young people in your classrooms. You arguably don't need to come to so many of these kind of conferences. A lot of the information is already there. It's just a case of teasing it out of the kids in your classes. What I love is the fact that the collective action of Bebo and Facebook was double that of the University petition site, which only has 250 names left on it. So how can this work for education? What does it mean for learning? Well, what it means is that yes, tools can be motivating, they can motivate kids to do certain things. But the most powerful part is when you take the ingredients. You take several ingredients and mix them together. And social media is all about mashing up technologies. We call it mashups. So if you've got Google Earth in your computers in school, yeah, so you've got Google Earth. So make sure you've got it downloaded somewhere. Second thing, and this is just an example, Google for Flickerfly. Okay, Flickr is the photo sharing website. Fly, you can guess what this tool is going to allow you to do. Now, here's an example. I'm a languages teacher, and quite often you want the kids to understand a little bit more about the country in which the language is spoken. This will fit a bill for geography teachers, primary school teachers study the environment, you name it. So on Flickr, I've looked up, I've done a search for both Flickerfly as a search term, Flickerfly and Italy, because Italy is the country I want them to look around. And I've got 309 photos that have been returned with both pictures of Italy with Flickerfly added to it. and I'm just going to show you what Flickerfly does. Here's the Rio Maggiore, and down here it says fly to this location. So if I click that, oh, you're kidding me. We didn't check that one. Refresh it. Hey, okay. And we open it. Couldn't authenticate. Rubbish. Here we go. And we fly in to where the Rio Maggiore is. Now it might not be able to refresh because it looks like Google Earth just been knocked offline. So I'm going to quit Google Earth and we'll just try again. Okay. Here's another one. I've just come back from Florence. This is my first holiday since my honeymoon. Absolute bliss. But most kids don't have a sense of scale. They don't know where Florence is. They don't really care. And if you're seeing this in a PowerPoint presentation, it's flat. So there's no sense of geography. It's just random photos taken off the web. And it's also very copy and paste. You have kids copying pictures off the web, copying the words underneath, when frankly we can read those for ourselves. Better still though is let's just fly to that location. So again, we can open that, and you'll see that in the background I've got Google Earth opening up, and this hopefully we'll be able now to. There we go. Hopefully we'll be logged in. Yeah, we are. This should be able to refresh now. So we fly in. I've got so much rubbish on my Google Earth, like flight plans and stuff. Whoops, I think he's got lost. Going to the wrong one. Hold on. Unless I'm wrong. Let's just go back. Okay. There is a Florence in America. There we go. So now we can fly around, see where Florence is. See the picture there on the side was from Rio de Maggiore. So all these pictures are now getting saved into Google Earth. When I get a few of them let's just get one more. Okay. I'm going to let that go in, just like that. Zoom in. You click the photo. There we go, and we can view the picture in full, and the kids can talk to that picture. And not only that, we can go in, we can have a bit of a closer look to see what it is. We can see the size of this thing in relation to the buildings around it, get a real sense of scale. If I just take one more picture, Venice. Oh, Venice. Sorry, you've just come back from a holiday and now you want to go on another one, but we fly over to Venice. And then flying about Venice, even as an adult, I didn't know that it really is an island. That makes me sound really dull, I know. But it was only flying in the plane that I realised quite how island-like it is. And so what you're able to do is explain not just Venice with a picture, but then show the Grand Canal snaking through the middle. You've got your big picture there that you've copied, if you like, from Flickr, and you've brought it in. And I think that, on an interactive whiteboard in particular, because you can be quite tactile with this, offers a lovely alternative to simply having a PowerPoint, a flat PowerPoint, saying this is Venice, this is blah blah blah. Not that any of your kids would ever do that. BBC World do it. You'll have noticed that the Bangladesh River Journey, for example, is taken an expedition by BBC staff. And what they've done is they've got pictures, they've got news reports. I think the pictures are a different colour. I don't know what the orange one is. But anyway, you can click the hyperlinks and go through into the video or photographs of that particular area when they went on that river journey. And that's incredibly easy to do. It's a combination. What tools are being used here? Any ideas? There's two tools being used. Google Earth, you put a marker in, and then Flickr. And, if you want, a link out to your school blog or webpage. So once you've got two tools together, you can normally start adding other tools into the ingredients. It's a bit like everyone's Christmas cake is the best. But everyone's Christmas cake is different. So add in different ingredients, but you use the same couple of technologies. And the trick to doing, I think, to doing new, innovative, creative stuff with technology is not to try and be the fastest, use the new stuff, because it's unfamiliar, and we've already learned that unfamiliar tools tend not to have the biggest effects. But it's use tools which are familiar, so Google Earth you're comfortable with, uploading a photo you could get comfortable with very quickly, and mixing them together. You could use something called as well Community Walk, which makes this even easier. community walk is the mashup, and it just makes it very easy. You can even add videos if you want to that. So I really like that, and I think it's a good starting point for innovation in the classroom. Now, is my PowerPoint going to die? No. Flickr Fly Center, you go on that webpage, it explains what to do. You just copy and paste the code, everything easier. Copy and paste the code. Third point, in relation to learning from our social networks, if any of you have been onto kids' sites, this question comes up. How many friends can you really have? Okay, those of you on Facebook, a lot of you on Facebook, I'd love to know the average of a Redbridge teacher. Okay, how many friends do you have? Shout out a little bit. 20. Okay? 91. 10. Don't feel bad about it. Okay? See, it's really strange. You get a huge mixture there. Yeah? 20, 10, 90. And it doesn't mean that two of you are less sociable than another. It just means that people have different ways of exploiting that social network. You're 10, and you're 20, are they quite close face-to-face friends? In fact, yeah. Anyone here a parent with kids that have left home and live all over the place, yeah? Do you use Facebook?
Yeah.
Are nearly all your friends family then?
No.
No? What kind of other things do you have? Face-to-face or long-lost friends?
Yeah, everything.
Everything. Okay, how many friends do you have?
65, 70.
65, 70. The thing that's interesting is we're all pretty much aware of how many friends we have. Yet if I asked you the question without Facebook, just how many friends do you have? Would you be able to give me an answer? Well, I think the Roman legion had it right. The Roman legion reckoned you could have 8 friends. You could have 8 people that you actually cared about on a regular basis. Think about your own lives, and it's probably about right. Take away your immediate family, and then you have a couple of best friends. Boys don't have best friends. But, you know, you'll end up with about 8. And the figure of 8 was the Roman contravarium. The Roman contravarium was 8 men who slept, ate, did everything together, you could imagine, for 20 years. And the bet was, Caesar's idea was, if we do it that way, then at least they'll be loyal to each other. And if they're loyal to each other, they'll be loyal to me. And the way ensured that, you put 8 of them together, and then you would take 6 of them, and have a cohort, and then come up with a legion, so on and so forth. The Roman legion was made up of 8s and 10s. It was made up of very small groups. You never had to know more than 8 people to get anything done. Whereas in Redbridge, although it's such an important thing, how many people do you have to know to get anything done? It's not a criticism of Redbridge, it's a criticism of any local authority, of any organisation that has more than 100 people, because 100 is Dunbar's law. And 100 is a fascinating number. It's obviously what, well, actually, do you know, a centurion was in charge of 80 men. I find that fascinating. Is there a history teacher here that would disagree with me? Please feel free to text message. Public humiliation, I can do. But no, the 100 is interesting because 100 is how many you can effectively organise. So Gore-Tex factories all around the world only have 100 people working in them. And the minute they reach 101 people, they split the factory into 2. Because if you ever go and visit a Gore-Tex factory, you'll normally find another one nearby. And the reason is because, actually, while we can only have 8 friends, we can coordinate with 100 people. Tonight's Teach Meet has, surprise, surprise, 100 people coming to self-organised, which I find quite interesting. I wonder how that will affect whether we organise the evening or unorganise it. Here are my 481 bestest friends. And what is fascinating about this friend scale is the crisscrossing. You'll notice that some bits are far more crisscrossed than others. Can anyone guess the quarter of that wheel that are my teacher friends? Try the unconnected one. Yeah? All the ones up the top right, almost without exception, are teachers. The one in the top left are media people whose business is networking and talking to each other. And the ones at the bottom are former students who are in their 20s. So it's kind of native language for them. So they're all connected. You can see they're connected to each other. And you can see as well that quite a lot of my former students I've introduced to jobs in the media because that's what they all wanted to do. So they've become friends. So it's a really, lots of connections going on between young people, the media industry, and absolutely no connection going on with the teaching profession. Or within it. There's not even anything linking those teachers together. They're all friends of one other teacher. Now I wonder what Redbridge's friend wheel would look like. And what would be intriguing is if you could all become friends with each other for the purposes of a social experiment to see how connected you actually are. There's one for Anthony, one action research project while you're off in your paternity leave. The thing about these social networks and the fact that everyone's connected, they lead us to four quite distinct factors that I think work really well in learning. And these factors come from Dana Boyd, who's like the social networking researcher based in Berkeley, or she was based in Berkeley, I presume she still is. And the first one is persistence. The fact that everything and everyone is there all the time once they're published on the web. And I'm sure that Carol will talk about that kind of persistence and the bother it can get us into, but hopefully opportunities as well. If my name weren't persistent on the web, I wouldn't be here today, because Anthony wouldn't have known that it existed, and I'd be sitting at home playing with my baby. Instead, I'm doing a talk to you because, thankfully, anything I've done in the past is probably still online. That's the first point. Second point, searchability. Everything is miscellaneous. Another title of a great book by Dave Weinberger. Remember that we needed to put things into filing cabinets to be able to find them again. Well, now thanks to the web, you don't have to. And Flickr's actually a great example. Just by typing the word angst, you can study abstract concepts in the visual. Just, I think it's fascinating. So why are these photos angst-driven? What kind of thing? Great starters for discussion in primary school, even with nursery kids. You know, check the images first, always. Before I loaded these up last night to check them. You know, angst could come up with lots of things. I did another search for love, a search you clearly wanted to do a search for beforehand. And what came up for that was really interesting. Why are certain things coming up with love? What could that be? You know, why has that got love on it? So you get you know, descriptions of people having different perspectives. How is it doing that? Because that dog, that photo's called Wild Dog. It's not called love. And what we do is we click on the photo, and someone, if we go down, has used a tag, it's like a luggage label, to describe that photo's from Mongolia, we know that, it's a wild dog. We know the name of the place or the person. And well, it's not actually in the tags, which is fascinating. Normally I'd expect to see the word love somewhere in here. I think what's happened is that so many people underneath have said love the picture that it's actually come out. So there's the reason why. But these tags are really powerful. It means that if I want to run a search and see who has cute pictures of my baby, I can do that. Because obviously I'm not the only one taking pictures. So this is a picture taken by my wife. So when I'm out working, I can see what she's up to. These are pictures taken by me. And the way they're done, there's a 2-minute sunbathe. It doesn't have our name written in the picture anywhere, but it does have it down here in the tags, so that I can quickly pull together all the pictures. It's a relatively unique tag. Not everyone is going to be looking for that, but it's a tag that serves her in interesting ways later on in her life. Likewise, my wife's got a tag, and likewise, I have a tag. So if someone searches for Ewan McIntosh, all that stuff comes up. Our children are going to have digital breadcrumbs like this, regardless of what we do to prevent them doing it in school. They'll do it outside school. Their parents, for better or for worse, will do it. It's a really, it's not me doing a social experiment with my daughter, but I'm curious to see what happens. You know, is this a wise thing to do, or will she want them all to be taken off later? Will she want them all to be made private? I don't know, and she's 9 months old, and despite the fact she's highly intelligent, clearly, I can't ask her. Replicability. I don't think we do enough of this in school. There's a big difference between something being replicable in the way that I showed you those Flickr photos flying into Google Earth and just being copied. Increasingly, people are encouraged to copy and paste, so you can get those embed codes in YouTube. You can Bluetooth things back and forth. I tried Bluetoothing a video to a few of you earlier on, but you're not looking at your phone to pick it up. I'll do that during the break, so do keep your mobile phone in front of you in case I do that. We make it technically easy to copy and paste. So jump cut's a beautiful example. I know it's blocked in your authority, and we had it unblocked this morning, but maybe it's something worth thinking about. I just wanted to show you it. You log into Jump Cut, and they've got some challenges like this at the moment. Adidas want their customers to remix adverts for their football shoes, their soccer boots. And so this one here, LA Remix, here's the video, which we can play. Should be able to play. But underneath you'll notice I have all the clips. And all the component parts of that video are split up. So I can now, it's a bit like having a Mac online. I can now do video editing on Jump Cut. I can change the audio backing. So I could record something, upload it, and then make my voice the backing, the narrative for that advert. Your students can therefore remake adverts in their own voice and make an advert sell a different thing in a different way. You can add titles, you can add innumerable effects, different actions with photographs. You can even just upload photographs and have them do things in extraordinary ways. Do you like? It's quite nice, yeah? So if you don't have a Mac, but you want its capability for video editing, then Jump Cut's not a bad solution. But they make it so easy. You know, if you want to move that clip around, just drag and drop. And you can move that clip around. So, again, that's what's going on in the social world. It's legally allowed. So it's all Creative Commons licensed. One of the greatest things for Flickr is just doing search for, Redbridge. I want to be able to use those photos on my blog without blasting people's copyright. So on advanced search, I can search within Creative Commons licensed material, and voila, it's reduced the number of search results to 308, but all of these pictures I can use in my blog. So I'm going to go to most interesting. These are most relevant. These are most interesting pictures from Redbridge. Redbridge Causeway, fascinating place. But I bet you didn't know these were fascinating places you could go and visit in your local area. Yeah? Farmers Market. The Redbridge roundabout. Great area. So, I know you've got a farmers market. I spotted that on the way in. Your tourist information people do a grand job. But I can go and see photos of it and see it's actually a real farmers market, a really good one. Do you not know that? Oh, no, you've got a bloke in the tube. Maybe it was just a drop, I don't know. I use this to actually find out what underground station I should take to get here. Because there's a lot of choice, none of them are close by it seems. So you use Flickr to work out underground stations. All you do is type in Redbridge and underground. And then what you can do is quite clearly see which ones you would like to get off at and which ones you wouldn't like to get off at. You think I'm crazy, but if you're walking through the street with all that equipment, you don't want to be looking for a cab. So that's exactly what I did. So it's a great source of copyright-free images, which teachers love. They're always out for something free. Final point, these invisible audiences. Well, I talked about, MySpace has 300 million users, and most kids kind of know the 8, 10, 12 friends that are going to look at their stuff. There are obviously the invisible audience, the ones you don't know are looking at it. My blog's got loads of them. If I jump over to my blog, let's just create a new window there, and I'll show you this. I know that certain people read my blog because they leave comments. They leave comments in the blog. But I don't know who the 4,000 people are that choose to get every post by email. Don't know that. Don't know who they are. Don't know why they're interested in it. They're an invisible audience. They're quite hard to write for. It's quite hard to write for people or do podcasts for people that you don't know. Because they might not even be teachers, they might be parents. So you've got this invisible audience, you've got your friends, you've got your loosely affiliated contacts. That takes you up to your 100 kind of known people that you work with on a regular basis. And then you've got what's called the former audience. Another great, I can't remember unfortunately who came up with it, but the former audience is the idea that people before used to just consume stuff, used to sit in front of the telly, whereas now people leave comments, they interact. Quite a lot of schools, when we started doing blogging, were afraid of that. They said, but anyone could leave a comment. And I was like, yeah, isn't that cool? And they were like, no, that's really not, we don't like that. We don't like the idea of strangers leaving comments in our school. They were thinking of it in terms of strangers pinning notices up on their school notice boards. It's a very different culture that's here that I find interesting. And I want to try and explore that culture in the last 10 minutes or so before we hopefully take some questions. The fourth point is about something completely different. Any guesses what that is? You've seen the talk.
I see it.
You've seen the notes. I'll zoom in. Any guesses? It's not maggots, as some keep saying. It's cell phones. It's 426,000 of them. The number that are thrown away in the United States every day. Why do all these people throw away their cell phones every day? Because they want the latest one. Do they want that, or do they want one that does... Who's nicked my phone? It does the internet. Okay? I'd sooner have that for the internet, but it's a terrible telephone, which is why I have two phones. There are 2.5 billion mobile phone users in the world. That figure by Christmas time will be 3 billion, so nearly half the world will own a mobile phone. 60% of them are in developing countries. So if you're talking about international links, increasingly international links with African countries, Malawi has particular strong connections with Scotland, for example, or with China or with India, then mobile phones are probably the way that you're going to be eventually communicating with these people. You might not be using them in your class, they certainly will be. I've just come back from India, where the number of kids who have cell phones is incredible. And they're using it not for text messaging, well they are, obviously, but they're using it occasionally for mobile internet access, because broadband's hard and expensive to come by. In South Korea, 43% of people use their cell phone as the principal source of internet access. So they constantly have broadband on their phones. Anything that happens in Asia, incidentally, does tend to happen here rather soon. So in the coming year, you'll see an increasing number of students walking into school hiding these. Because you can access any site you want with these. There's even cheat sites on the web that show you how to conceal that in your laptop case. So when you're a student, you have your laptop open with one of these slimline cases just sitting on the desk, and this is hidden in the lining, so that the teacher can't see you're accessing the web through your own internet access, which only costs you 10 quid a month. Teachers, incidentally, are some of the most fervent users of these to get around silly firewalls that block them from using sensible stuff. Shared awareness is what these allow you to do. I'm going to show you very quickly what shared awareness means. The very first one is text messaging. How did you find out about today? Probably email, yeah? Did anyone find out through a text message? No. Formal organisations do have mechanisms like email, notice boards and so on and so forth to tell people about stuff. Informal organisations don't. What would be interesting is how people find out about TeachMeet, because I know that a few people did find out about TeachMeet through text message. One curious thing is this, Twitter. Twitter is a mobile phone website. I'm not going to text because I've got other things open on my phone at the moment, but basically what I can do is type a message in here saying what I'm doing at the moment, and then by the end of the talk we can see who else replies. So doing one of those say hi things on Twitter for a bunch of teachers in the northeast of London or southwest of Essex. I just don't know more taxi drivers have debates about it. Every taxi driver I've had has a debate whether I'm in Essex or London. So I click update, and I'll come back to that in a while. Let's see who responds to it. But Twitter's a really good way for communicating through your text message about what you're doing at the moment. Last night I was bored on the train, so I just told people which towns I was at, which bit I was flying through. Oh, there he is. Scary boy Evans. Half a minute ago. So half a minute ago he responded to say, hi pal, right? So he'll be there. Mike Coulter, who I'm working with, is telling me to go to Carnaby Street for my tank top. Last night people were saying, because I was passing through Berwick upon Tweed, and there's a big debate in Scotland at the moment because they all want to be Scottish and not English. So I was passing through and wasn't sure which country I was in, so they were helping me out with web links to BBC stories that tell me actually it's still England. Twitter was also really useful last week in Jaipur when people texted to say that they were only 20 feet away from one of the blasts. Twitter was used in the instant the Chinese earthquake happened, with people working up the top of skyscrapers. Twitter is the place that an increasing number of people are finding out about these world events, because it's a constant flow of information that you're kind of aware of, but you're not paying attention to until you need to. The BBC is relying on Twitter feeds from people there, people texting messages to a website in order to get its news coverage, to find its leads, to send its local stringer along to interview. So these mobile devices can be used for incredibly powerful ways of connecting strangers for worthwhile causes. There's a service called Dodgeball, for example, not really used in the UK, but I'll be using it in the United States this summer. Because while a lot of my friends I know will not be in the same place as I am at the same time, a lot of their friends will be. They're called friends of a friend, or FOFs, friends of a friend. So when I'm in one of these cities, I can be walking down the street, passing a bar, and it will say, aha, well, Dan's in this bar. Now you don't know Dan, but if John was here, he would introduce you to him. And it will send me a photograph of Dan. So I can go in and say, hi Dan, if John was here, he would have introduced us. Apparently we have shared interest in geeky stuff and education. And then we can sit down and have a beer. You can also use it for dating, which is what the main thing is behind the side. It was blocked for profanity. We've got quite a lot of very clever mobile devices, most of which, I'm not saying Redbridge, but certainly in schools do tend to be banned, which is a great shame. But they allow for things like this to happen. This is a flash mob. Have you seen a flash mob before? Yeah. There was a flash mob that went wrong last week because they destroyed the Millennium Gardens with a water fight. This went too far. Take a look at this. What they do is they set up a very simple goal. There is a win in the game. It's a game. Yeah. There's a win point. The win point is that everyone stands still in Grand Central Station in New York. What do you I'm going to ask you, I'll let you watch this. What do you think the win is for the people taking part and for the people around?
I just walked in. Has it been going on for a while?
No, we're just going to this guy just dropped the baby
It's like everybody.
Yeah.
I love this guy.
Oh my God, there's hundreds of people frozen everywhere. This is wild.
That's so weird. I don't either.
It's some kind of protest problem.
Protest.
They're not moving. I can't move my God. I need some help. Never mind.
Alright then, so what made that work?
That's the weirdest thing I've ever
What made it work?
I thought it was only there.
There was a shared awareness of what everyone was there to do. And the thing about shared awareness is that you need to have rules. So the rule was, we'll all meet outside the venue at this time. You'll all listen to the instructions. You will all go and you will all freeze at precisely this time. And you will stay frozen until the clock in Grand Central says that time. And you will not move regardless of what happens. And then once it's done, walk away. So there were very distinct rules that made that work, and they were rules that were short enough, or could be made short enough to fit in a text message. So if you received it, you just forwarded it to your friend. Replicable, copyable, embeddable, very simple, very distinct rules. The reason the one in the Millennium Gardens didn't work is because it was just, let's go and have a water fight in the Millennium Gardens. So it was just anarchy. So it went too far. You had no control over it. There was also no win. The win for these guys is that they got all those people who are normally stressed and busy running for their train to stop and applaud them. So that was the win-win. That if they did everything they were told, they'd get that feel-good factor. And also it was video and put in the web, so you can go off and do your own. So I think that's a nice little illustration of what shared awareness is about. What does shared awareness mean for the classroom? It can mean lots of things. Shared awareness for the classroom basically boils down to everything that is in assessment is for learning. But if you've read the black box, inside the black box, then you understand what shared awareness is. Because it's about understanding what you are there for as a teacher and what the students are there for to learn. And it's about them knowing that in their terms. Once you've got that, you have participation culture. Because if you walk into a class where there's a combination of assessment for learning, where outcomes are clear and the way you're going to get there is decided by the learner, and active learning, where the learner sets the path of learning, and the teacher retro-plans and accommodates that, and over the course of a much longer period of time, maybe a year instead of a term, plans the works that everyone's covered, then you end up with participation culture, because it's an equal 50-50 weighting between teacher and learner. Participation culture depends on a few things. It depends a great deal on what's public and what's private, especially when you get taking it onto the web. Think of it as division of labour, so division of task between the teacher and learner. I'm not here to do a workshop in assessment for learning. You can go off and do that yourselves, or you may know the basic principles already. But before, you used to do this to sort of private public. A few teachers I know still do this. You put on power clothes to go out to school, and you get your hair all ready. You go out, you wear a tie. You can take the tie off. And then when you come home, you take it all off. My parents were both teachers, and made a huge deal of changing out of school uniform. Get into your normal clothes. Because if we didn't do that, then it was still like being in school. Nowadays it's much more complex, because we have all these online identities. All of you, if you've ever booked a flight with SqueezyJet or with lastminute.com, or you've ever bought a book from Amazon, you have an identity on that site. Amazon knows what kind of books you like and suggests new ones. It knows what taste in music you have. So we've gone from this one-way kind of identity, public-private, to a really huge plethora of grey issues. A nice way to split it up is to look at the types of spaces we inhabit. And this makes the grey issues a little less grey. Now these are the spaces that young people inhabit. Secret spaces, mobile phones. They send text messages to each other. I'm sure we'll see an example too where text messages are far from being private and secret. Because the minute a text message goes out, it's a very public affair. Take a look. If I had sent it out by text message, it would still reach the site. But take a look at this. If we just go back to the replies on this, we can see that we've got someone from Hamilton in New Zealand saying hi, someone from Auckland, New Zealand, someone from Sutton Coldfield, a little bit. There we go. Someone from Stirling. Amy's from Stirling. H.G. John is coming tonight, I think, Manchester. Dave McQueen in London. Ironically, he's writing a workshop for an Insights Day for teachers around using technology. From Virginia, USA. My mum in Dunoon. Hello, teacher types. From Peebles in the Scottish Borders, there's Thingy coming tonight, Drew, Buddy. And there's Scary Boy Evans again. So, a text message is not private. A text message can end up in New Zealand, in Virginia.